Rebecca Hayes had given up on love. At 32, after 3 failed relationships and countless disappointing first dates, she'd made peace with the idea that maybe romance just wasn't in the cards for her. So when her best friend Sarah practically begged her to meet the perfect guy at Riverside Café on a crisp October evening, Rebecca almost said no. Almost. But Sarah had that look in her eyes, the one that said she knew something Rebecca didn't. So Rebecca agreed, mostly to get Sarah to stop texting her every hour with, "Just give him a chance" messages. Now, sitting at table 12 with a lukewarm cappuccino and her phone showing 7:23 p.m., 23 minutes past their agreed meeting time, Rebecca wished she'd trusted her instincts and stayed home. The cafe buzzed with Friday evening energy. Couples shared desserts, friends laughed over wine, and Rebecca sat alone, feeling like a spotlight was shining directly on her solitude. She'd give him 5 more minutes, she decided. Then she'd leave, block Sarah's number for a week, and spend the rest of her evening with Netflix and her cat, Mr. Whiskers. But at 7:27 p.m., something unexpected happened. The cafe door didn't open to reveal her tardy date. Instead, 2 identical little girls burst through it like they were on the most important mission of their lives. They couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with matching blonde pigtails tied with purple ribbons and eyes so blue they looked like pieces of sky. They wore coordinating dresses, one in lavender, one in violet, and moved with a synchronized determination that was both adorable and slightly unsettling. Their eyes scanned the cafe with laser focus, passing over couples and groups until they landed squarely on Rebecca. The girl in lavender elbowed her sister and pointed. They exchanged a quick nod, some silent twin communication, and marched straight toward Rebecca's table. "Excuse me," the girl in lavender said with surprising politeness. "Are you Miss Rebecca?" Rebecca blinked, completely thrown. Yes? How did you?" "We're Emma and Ella," the girl in violet interrupted, gesturing between them. "I'm Ella. That's Emma. We need to talk to you about our dad." Rebecca's confusion must have shown on her face because Emma quickly added, "He's supposed to be here for your date, but there's been a situation." "A situation?" Rebecca echoed, her mind racing. Sarah had set her up with someone named Daniel Porter, a high school teacher. She definitely hadn't mentioned that Daniel had twin daughters. The girls pulled out the chairs across from Rebecca and sat down with the confidence of tiny business executives about to negotiate a merger. "Okay, so here's the thing," Emma began, folding her hands on the table. "Dad doesn't actually know we're here. We kind of borrowed Mrs. Chen's phone and told her we were meeting Dad here for a surprise," Ella added sheepishly. "Which isn't technically a lie because it is a surprise. Just not the kind she thinks." Rebecca should have been alarmed. 2 unaccompanied 7-year-olds in a cafe, their father having no idea where they were. This was clearly a situation that required adult intervention. But something about these girls, their earnestness, their obvious intelligence, made her pause. "Does your dad know about this date?" Rebecca asked carefully. Both girls nodded vigorously. "Oh yes," Emma said. "He's been nervous about it all week. He tried on 6 different shirts this morning." 6, Ella emphasized. "We counted." "But then Mr. Henderson called," Emma continued, her voice dropping to a whisper as if sharing classified information. "He's the principal at Dad's school. There was an emergency. Something about the heating system breaking and flooding the gymnasium. Dad's the one who organizes all the school events, so he had to go deal with it." "He tried calling you," Ella said. "Like 5 times. But I think he had the wrong number because nobody answered." Rebecca pulled out her phone. Sure enough, it was on silent, and there were 4 missed calls from an unknown number and 2 text messages. "Rebecca, this is Daniel. I'm so sorry, there's an emergency at school. I'm going to be late. Please don't leave. I know this is a terrible first impression. I'll explain everything. Please give me 30 minutes. The messages had come in at 6:45 p.m. Rebecca's heart, which had been hardening with each minute of waiting, softened slightly. "So you two decided to come here and—" "What exactly?" Rebecca asked. The twins exchanged another one of their meaningful glances. Then Emma spoke, her voice suddenly small and vulnerable in a way that made Rebecca's chest tighten. "We came to make sure you didn't leave. 'Cause Dad really likes you. We know because we heard him talking to Uncle Mike on the phone. He said you sounded smart and funny and kind, and that he hadn't been this excited about meeting someone in a really long time. Since Mom died," Ella added quietly. The words landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. Rebecca felt something shift in her chest. "When did that happen?" she asked gently. 3 years ago, Emma said. "Car accident. It was really fast. The police said she didn't feel any pain. Dad took care of us by himself after that," Ella continued. "Our grandparents wanted to help, but they live in Florida, and we didn't want to leave our school and our friends. So Dad learned how to do everything. Cooking, braiding hair, helping with homework, everything. He's really good at it now," Emma said with fierce pride. "He makes the best chocolate chip pancakes on Sunday mornings. And he never misses our soccer games, even when he's really tired." Rebecca felt tears pricking at her eyes. She'd been so focused on her own disappointment, her own series of romantic failures, that she'd forgotten how much courage it took for anyone to put themselves out there. Especially someone who'd lost the love of their life and was raising 2 children alone. "Tell me about your dad," Rebecca said, settling back in her chair. "What's he like?" The transformation in the girls was immediate. Their faces lit up like Christmas morning. For the next 20 minutes, Rebecca learned more about Daniel Porter than any dating profile could have told her. She learned that he taught 11th grade history and made his lessons so interesting that even the kids who hated school loved his class. That he did funny voices when reading bedtime stories. That he sang off-key in the shower and thought nobody could hear him, but they definitely could. "He's scared of spiders," Ella confided with a giggle. "He makes us catch them and take them outside. But he's brave about the important stuff," Emma added quickly. "When I broke my arm last year falling off the monkey bars, he stayed really calm the whole time, even though Ella said she could see him shaking. He cried at our school play last spring," Ella said. "We were just trees in the background, but he cried anyway." "Happy crying," Emma clarified. "He does that sometimes. Happy crying." They told her about the treehouse he built in their backyard, working on it every weekend for 2 months until it was perfect. About the time he tried to bake their birthday cake from scratch, and it had collapsed in the middle, so he'd filled the crater with extra frosting and called it a volcano cake. About how he let them paint one wall of their bedroom any color they wanted, and they'd chosen purple and covered it with glow-in-the-dark stars. "He still talks to Mom sometimes," Emma said softly. "We hear him in the garage where he keeps her picture. He tells her about us, about how we're doing. About how hard it is sometimes, but how he's trying his best. We want him to be happy again," Ella said, her blue eyes intense. "Really happy, not just pretend happy for our sake. That's why when Aunt Sarah said she had a friend who might be perfect for Dad, we got so excited." "Aunt Sarah is your aunt?" Rebecca asked, the pieces clicking into place. "Not really," Emma explained. "She's Dad's friend from college, but we call her Aunt. She talks about you all the time. She says you're the smartest person she knows and you have a huge heart and you love animals." "I do love animals," Rebecca admitted with a smile. "I'm a veterinarian." "We knew that," both girls exclaimed together. "Dad loves animals too," Ella said. "We have a dog named Biscuit and a cat named Professor Whiskers." "Professor Whiskers?" Rebecca laughed. "Dad let us name him," Emma explained. "We were reading Harry Potter." A waitress approached their table, eyeing the girls with mild concern. "Everything okay here?" "Perfect," Rebecca said quickly. "These are my friends. Could we get 2 hot chocolates? With extra whipped cream." The girls' faces lit up, and Rebecca felt something warm bloom in her chest. When had she last felt this comfortable this quickly with anyone? As they waited for the hot chocolates, Rebecca's phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. Still dealing with the flood situation. Another 20 minutes max. Please tell me you haven't left. Rebecca looked at the two hopeful faces across from her and made a decision. I'm still here. Take your time. I'm in good company. She added a smiley face, something she never did, and hit send. That was Dad, wasn't it? Emma asked, reading her expression. He's still working on the school problem, Rebecca confirmed. But he'll be here soon. You're going to wait? Ella asked, her voice small and hopeful. I'm going to wait, Rebecca said firmly. Besides, I need to hear more about this volcano birthday cake disaster. The girls giggled and launched into the story, their words tumbling over each other in their excitement. The hot chocolates arrived, topped with mountains of whipped cream that gave both girls impressive mustaches. They didn't seem to notice or care, and Rebecca found herself laughing more genuinely than she had in months. Between sips of hot chocolate, the girls continued their mission of convincing Rebecca that their father was worth waiting for. But they didn't need to try so hard. Rebecca was already convinced. Not by the facts, though a high school teacher who built treehouses and made volcano cakes and sang off-key in the shower was pretty appealing. She was convinced by these two extraordinary little girls who loved their father so much they'd orchestrated this entire intervention. By the way they spoke about him with such pride and devotion. By the picture they painted of a man who'd been knocked down by tragedy, but got up every day and showed up for his daughters with everything he had. That was the kind of person Rebecca wanted to know. Can I tell you a secret? Emma asked suddenly, leaning forward conspiratorially. Always, Rebecca said. We looked you up online, Emma confessed. Your veterinary clinic has a website with pictures. You were hugging a really big dog. That's Moose, Rebecca said with a smile. He's a Great Dane. Sweetest dog you'll ever meet, but he thinks he's a lapdog. Dad said he could tell from your picture that you have kind eyes, Ella added. We looked at the picture too and we agree. Rebecca felt her cheeks warm. That's very sweet. It's true, Emma said matter-of-factly. We're very good at reading people. It's a twin thing. Plus Mom always told us to trust our instincts about people, Ella added. She said you can tell a lot about someone by how they treat animals and kids. Your mom sounds like she was very wise, Rebecca said softly. She was the best, Emma said, her voice wobbling slightly. We miss her every day. But we know she'd want Dad to be happy, Ella added quickly. She told him that before she died. We heard them talking in the hospital. She made him promise he wouldn't be alone forever. Rebecca had to blink back tears. The image of a dying woman making her husband promise to find love again, of these two girls overhearing that conversation and carrying it with them. It was almost too much. You two are incredibly brave, Rebecca said. And your dad is very lucky to have you. We're lucky to have him, Emma corrected. Even when he burns dinner or forgets to sign our permission slips or has a bad day, and needs to sit quietly by himself for a while, he's still the best dad in the world. At 8:15 p.m., 45 minutes after Rebecca had been ready to leave, the cafe door opened again. The man who walked through it looked exactly like his daughters had described him, and nothing like Rebecca had imagined. Daniel Porter was tall but not intimidating, with a kind of face that looked like it smiled often. His dark hair was slightly messy, there were stress lines around his eyes, and his shirt, a blue button-down that Rebecca suspected was one of the famous 6 he'd tried on, was wrinkled and had what looked like water stains on the sleeves. His eyes scanned the cafe anxiously until they landed on the table where his daughters sat with a stranger. The expression that crossed his face was a complicated mixture of relief, confusion, horror, and something that might have been hope. He rushed over, and Rebecca watched as his eyes took in the scene. His 2 daughters, hot chocolate mustaches and all, sitting comfortably with the woman he was supposed to be on a first date with. Emma. Ella. His voice was controlled, but Rebecca could hear the panic underneath. What are you doing here? Does Mrs. Chan know where you are? We told her we were meeting you, Emma said calmly. Which is true. We just didn't mention Miss Rebecca would be here too. Daniel's eyes finally met Rebecca's, and she saw genuine mortification there. I am so sorry. I I have no idea how they even. They were making sure I didn't leave, Rebecca interrupted gently. Which, given that you were running late, was probably smart. I tried to call, Daniel said desperately. The school flooded and the principal is useless in a crisis and my phone died, and I had to borrow someone else's phone to text you and… He stopped, running a hand through his already messy hair. This is not how I wanted this to go. How did you want it to go? Rebecca asked, surprising herself with her directness. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. I wanted to show up on time, freshly showered and not smelling like mildew and gym equipment. I wanted to make a good first impression. I wanted you to see me as a competent adult, not a disaster of a single dad whose children have to run interference on his dates. I don't run interference, Emma protested. I provide strategic support. Despite everything, Daniel laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine, and it transformed his whole face. Rebecca felt something flutter in her chest. Have you eaten? She asked. Daniel blinked. What? Have you eaten? You've been dealing with a school emergency for hours. You're probably starving. I guess I am, but I don't want to. Sit down, Rebecca said firmly. Your daughters have been telling me all about you for the past hour. Now I'd like to hear your side of things. Daniel looked at his daughters, who nodded encouragingly, then back at Rebecca. Slowly, he pulled out the fourth chair at the table and sat down. Mrs. Chun is going to kill me, he muttered. We texted her from your phone while you were driving, Ella said helpfully. Told her we were with you and Miss Rebecca and we'd be home by 9. You what? Daniel pulled out his phone and checked it. Sure enough, there was a sent message to Mrs. Chun. When did you even? When you left it on the counter to go grab your keys, Emma explained. We're very efficient. Daniel looked at Rebecca with an expression of complete helplessness. I'm raising criminal masterminds. You're raising very clever girls who love you very much, Rebecca corrected. There's a difference. Something in Daniel's face softened. Yeah, he said quietly. I guess I am. They ordered food, pasta for Daniel, who admitted he hadn't eaten since breakfast, and a slice of cheesecake for the table to share. The girls chattered away, filling their father in on everything they told Rebecca, occasionally embellishing details or correcting each other. Rebecca watched Daniel with his daughters and saw everything they told her reflected in his actions. The way he automatically wiped chocolate from Ella's chin. How he cut Emma's cheesecake into smaller pieces without being asked. The softness in his eyes when he looked at them, even when he was clearly embarrassed by their matchmaking schemes. I really am sorry about this, Daniel said to Rebecca during a rare moment when both girls were distracted by something on Emma's phone. This is probably the worst first date story you'll ever have. Actually, Rebecca said, it might be the best one. Daniel looked at her skeptically. How do you figure? Because I got to see who you really are, Rebecca explained. Not the rehearsed first date version of you, but the real you. The single dad who juggles school emergencies and twin daughters. The guy who's doing his best and not always succeeding perfectly but never giving up. That's worth a lot more than a perfectly executed dinner date. Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Sarah said you were special. She wasn't kidding. Sarah talks too much, Rebecca said, but she was smiling. Sarah is a genius, Daniel countered. Even if her timing needs work. They talked while the girls finished their hot chocolates and started nodding off, leaning against each other like puppies. Rebecca learned that Daniel had been teaching for 9 years and loved it despite the frustrations. That he'd met his late wife, Jennifer, in college when they were both education majors. That he'd never planned on being a single parent but was determined to do it well. The hardest part isn't the practical stuff, Daniel admitted quietly, his eyes on his sleeping daughters. I figured out cooking and cleaning and braiding hair. The hardest part is worrying that I'm not enough. That they need a mom, and I'm trying to be both parents and I'm failing at it. You're not failing, Rebecca said firmly. Those girls worship you. And more importantly, they're happy. They're confident and kind and brave. You did that. Jennifer did that, Daniel said. She was only with them for 4 years, but she gave them such a strong foundation. I'm just trying not to screw it up. Give yourself more credit, Rebecca said. Building on a foundation is just as important as laying it. And from what I can see, you're doing an amazing job. Daniel met her eyes, and Rebecca saw vulnerability there that made her want to reach across the table and take his hand. She didn't, but only because she wasn't sure if that would be too much too soon. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Anything. Why did you stay? Most people would have left when I was late. Or definitely when my daughters showed up uninvited. Rebecca considered the question. Honestly? At first I stayed because your daughters were so sweet and earnest that I couldn't bring myself to disappoint them. But then I kept staying because I was curious. About them, about you, about this whole situation. And now I'm staying because I want to. Even though this has been the most chaotic first date in history. Especially because of that, Rebecca said with a smile. Chaos is honest. It strips away all the pretense and shows you who people really are. And I like who you are, Daniel Porter. Daniel's answering smile was worth every minute of waiting. Every moment of uncertainty. At 9 o'clock, Daniel reluctantly woke his daughters and prepared to leave. Emma and Ella hugged Rebecca goodbye like they'd known her for years, not hours. You'll see Dad again, right? Emma asked, her eyes serious. I hope so, Rebecca said honestly. Promise? Ella pressed. I promise to try my best, Rebecca said, which seemed to satisfy them. As Daniel herded his daughters toward the door, he turned back to Rebecca. Can I call you? Tomorrow? For a real date? One where I actually show up on time and my children aren't involved. I'd like that, Rebecca said. But for the record, I don't think tonight was a disaster. I think it was perfect in its own chaotic way. Daniel's smile could have lit up the whole cafe. Tomorrow then. 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up. It's a date, Rebecca confirmed. She watched them leave, Daniel's hands on his daughter's shoulders, the three of them a unit of love and resilience. And she thought about second chances, about how sometimes the best things come wrapped in unexpected packages. The next night, Daniel showed up at Rebecca's door at exactly 6:58 p.m. He wore a different shirt, still blue but this one unwrinkled. He had flowers, tulips, because Sarah had told him they were Rebecca's favorites. And he was nervous, which Rebecca found endearing. Their real first date was lovely. They went to a quiet Italian restaurant, talked for 3 hours, and discovered they had more in common than either expected. But as nice as it was, Rebecca found herself thinking about the night before. About hot chocolate mustaches and twin conspirators, and the beautiful chaos of real life. What are you smiling about? Daniel asked over dessert. I'm thinking about your daughters, Rebecca admitted. They're pretty spectacular. They really are, Daniel agreed. And they really like you. They've done nothing but talk about you all day. Fair warning, they're already planning our wedding. Rebecca laughed. Is that so? Apparently you're having butterfly-themed everything and Professor Whiskers is going to be the ring bearer. I'm honored by the promotion, Rebecca said. Last night I was just the nice lady from the café. Last night you became the woman who didn't run away when my life showed up in all its messy glory, Daniel said seriously. That's not a small thing, Rebecca. Over the next few months, Rebecca learned just how messy that glory could be. She learned about parent-teacher conferences and soccer practice carpools, and the chaos of 2 7-year-olds who seemed to have endless energy. She learned that Daniel burned dinner more often than he admitted, and that his house was always slightly messy because he prioritized time with his daughters over perfect cleanliness. She learned about grief too. About the hard days when Daniel would go quiet and distant. About the times Emma or Ella would suddenly cry for their mom. About the delicate balance of honoring the past while building a future. But she also learned about joy. About Sunday morning pancakes and movie nights where everyone fell asleep on the couch. About being included in bedtime stories and soccer games. About slowly, carefully, becoming part of a family that had been broken and was learning to heal. A year after that chaotic first date, Rebecca stood in Daniel's backyard at a small party celebrating the twins' 8th birthday. Emma and Ella ran around with their friends, their laughter filling the air. Daniel's arm was around Rebecca's waist, comfortable and familiar. "Happy?" he asked. "Very," Rebecca confirmed. "Even with the chaos?" "Especially with the chaos." Daniel kissed her temple. "Good. Because it's not going away anytime soon." "I wouldn't want it to," Rebecca said honestly. She looked at the party, at the children playing, at the life Daniel had built from grief and determination. And she thought about how she'd almost left that cafe. How close she'd come to missing all of this. "Thank you," she said suddenly. "For what?" "For being 23 minutes late to our first date." Daniel laughed. "That's a weird thing to thank me for. If you'd been on time, your daughters wouldn't have shown up," Rebecca explained. "And I wouldn't have gotten to see who you really were. Who they really are. I might have had a nice date with a handsome teacher, but I wouldn't have fallen in love with a devoted father and his amazing daughters." Daniel turned to face her fully. "You love us. All three of you," Rebecca confirmed. "The whole chaotic, beautiful package." "We love you too," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "We have for a while now. The girls wanted me to do some big romantic gesture, but I wanted to wait for the right moment." "This is the right moment," Rebecca said. "This is perfect." They stood there, arms around each other, watching the party unfold. Emma and Ella looked over and grinned, giving them matching thumbs up before running back to their friends. "They're plotting something," Daniel observed. "That's their scheming face. Should I be worried?" "Probably. But that's part of the package, right?" "Right," Rebecca agreed. "And I wouldn't change a single thing." 2 years after that first chaotic date, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, Rebecca married Daniel Porter in a small ceremony in the same backyard where she'd first said, "I love you." The twins served as joint maids of honor, wearing matching dresses they'd picked out themselves, butterfly-themed, naturally. Professor Whiskers did not, in fact, carry the rings. That duty went to Biscuit, the dog, who performed admirably despite getting distracted by a squirrel halfway down the aisle. During her vows, Rebecca looked at Emma and Ella and spoke directly to them. "Thank you for not letting me leave that cafe. Thank you for fighting for your dad's happiness. Thank you for taking a chance on me. I promise to love your father with everything I have. And I promise to be the best stepmom I can be. Even though I know I can never replace your mom. But I hope maybe I can be something else. Someone who loves you and supports you and shows up for you. Always." Both girls were crying by the time she finished, and so was half the audience. During his vows, Daniel said, "Rebecca, you took a chance on a guy who was 23 minutes late and came with a lot of baggage. You loved my daughters before you loved me, and that showed me exactly who you are. You're the second chance I didn't know I needed, and I promise to never make you wait again." "Except when there's school emergencies," Rebecca interjected, making everyone laugh. "Except for school emergencies," Daniel agreed. "Those are unavoidable." That night at the reception, Emma and Ella pulled Rebecca aside. "We have a present for you," Emma said. "We made it ourselves," Ella added. They handed her a book, handmade and carefully constructed. Inside were drawings and stories, documenting the night at the cafe and everything that had happened since. The title, written in careful child's handwriting and decorated with butterflies, read, "How We Found Rebecca. A True Story by Emma and Ella Porter." The dedication page said, "For Mom, who told Dad it was okay to love again. And for Rebecca, who was brave enough to stay." Rebecca read through the book with tears streaming down her face. Every page was filled with love and hope and the beautiful chaos that had become her life. "Do you like it?" Emma asked anxiously. "I love it," Rebecca said, pulling both girls into a hug. "Just like I love you too." "We love you too," they said in unison. And in that moment, surrounded by love and laughter and the family she'd found in the most unexpected way, Rebecca thought about fate and timing and second chances. Sometimes love isn't punctual. Sometimes it arrives 23 minutes late, carried by two determined little girls who refuse to let their father's happiness slip away. Sometimes the best things in life come from chaos and unexpected twists, and the courage to stay when everything says run. Sometimes you go to a cafe expecting disappointment and leave with everything you never knew you needed. That's the thing about second chances. They don't always arrive the way you expect. But when they do, when you're brave enough to say yes to the messy, beautiful possibility of it all, that's when the real magic begins.